Hello, this is James Reese, and welcome to another edition of Razorwire. Today, I'd like to kind of give a bit of an overview on the government or the UK government's cybersecurity strategy that's recently come out. I've had a chance to read through most of it. There's things like the glossary and stuff that I've kind of let go for the moment, but what I really wanted to do is kind of cover over some of the topics within it. I think it's a very good document, all in all. There's obviously a forward from the PM, so it is a strategy that's being taken quite significantly seriously. Whether you love him or hate him, immaterial at this point in time. And it kind of outlays what the cybersecurity strategy going forward for the UK government is. And there was a lot in it that I liked. I think there was a lot in it that needed quite significant expansion. It'll be interesting to see how things progress. I think first and foremost, they've decided on kind of like a pillar system. There are 5 pillars. You've got managing cybersecurity risk, protecting against cyber attack, detecting cyber events, developing cybersecurity skills, knowledge and culture, and minimizing the impact of security events. A good set of pillars. I don't know where that particular idea came from. I've got a few ideas. But it kind of covers the broad strokes and the broad points. First of all, you really need to understand what your cybersecurity risk is. Without knowledge of what your risk is, how can you look at what you need to do in order to mitigate that risk? So, it's a bit like Schrodinger's cat. You don't know if the cat's dead until you open up the box. So you need to really open up that box and start looking. Again, protecting against cyber attack. I see that as a nice big broad term. Everybody would like to protect against cyber attacks, but it's all in the execution of that. It's an interesting read in that space, and I think that's probably, something to be encouraged is probably the best way to describe it. Detecting cyber events, well, obviously, you need to know what's going on, preferably before it happens, or right at the beginning or when it's happening, so you can actually do something about it. Developing cybersecurity skills, knowledge and culture. Now, this is something you see a lot of people who podcast in this space, who talk in this space, put a lot of emphasis on skills, knowledge and culture. And that's very much a significant part of whether or not your security strategy is going to work. If you don't have the relevant skills, you don't have the relevant knowledge, and the culture in an organization or an institute or a body of individuals is that they don't care about security, then there's only very limited things that you're going to do. It's an important part of any strategy, and arguably I'd say it's right up there with understanding what your cybersecurity risk is, because you can understand the risks all day long, but if the culture is, well, we don't care about that, then you're not going to get very far. And finally, minimize the impact of security events is their final pillar, which protect against cyber attack and minimize the impact of security events. I kind of see them as a similar kind of thing. I don't know why they've split them into two. Maybe some of the commentators here can provide some additional insight on that one, but I see them as kind of the same thing. So there's many little focal points. As you read through the document, they have objectives, they've got focal points, they've got various information on what they want to achieve and a little bit of how they want to achieve it or what the plan is to achieve it. And I think it's quite an interesting read. It's a very long read. It's not a huge document, but it's long enough that it's going to take you a little while to kind of read it, digest it. You'll probably read it 2 or 3 times. So some of the focal points that they've mentioned actually within, based on that pillar system and a number of different kind of subheadings underneath. So there's a focal point based on focusing on risk management. Now, very important part of a security strategy, knowing your risks, knowing what it means, knowing what the cost is, knowing, what options you've got to be able to kind of mitigate that risk, or whether even you want to mitigate that risk. Do you want to transfer it? Do you want to reduce it? We've all gone and seen that and done that before. And I think it's good that they point that out within some of their key focal points, because it is so critical to the success of protecting any environment. So yeah, nice point, well made in there. Data-driven security was another focal point that was in there. I absolutely agree with that at this moment in time. The last 2 years have seen a significant change in the types of attacks that are going on. There's a lot of attacks on data happening at the moment, exfiltrating that data, ransoming that data, releasing that data out to the internet. If you don't pay your ransom or just because they feel like it, everything seems to be focused around making sure that the data itself is secure wherever it sits. We're seeing a big increase in encryption and multi-factor authentication for accessing that kind of data. And it's good that it's recognized within there, because that's really where things are going. One of the things that we mentioned a few times on this channel is there's a significant change at the moment towards kind of more remote working. Obviously, the pandemic has really kind of pushed that quite significantly, and it looks like that's going to be a matter of course and a standard thing that we're going to have going forward. A lot more organizations are downsizing their big offices in places like New York and Berlin and the UK and so on and so forth, because some of the fears that people had about remote working have had to be pushed to the side due to the pandemic, because there was no choice. And now we have the ability to be able to do that on a larger scale. I think that that's going to be a thing going forward. So rather than securing a perimeter, because your perimeter is particularly wide when you've got a large amount of staff working from home, you start to focus inwards towards the data that they're accessing, the data that they're consuming, the data that they're creating and providing. So a lot more data-driven security, a lot more data classification, a lot more understanding of kind of what it is you've got, where it is you're holding it, and countermeasures for that data itself. So bit of a shift in the way that Defence in Depth works, but us security people are used to kind of driving home to people how data is a particularly valuable commodity, and it's now being finally recognised in this particular document. They also mentioned supply chain risks in there as a focal point, and again, it's something we've covered a number of times. And absolutely, we're working in a world now where technology has been very much siloed out. There's a lot of service providers providing a lot of kind of managed services, software as a service, platform as a service, service as a service. Everything seems to be going down the route of as a service at this moment in time. Be it our IT, be it the management of that IT, be it there's even plenty of organisations that use CISO as a service. We do that for some people, and it's interesting that the attacks that we've seen on people like SolarWinds and some of the other key kind of software providers and large solution providers that are off-prem. We've seen the effects of what happens when something goes horribly wrong there. Finally, in the kind of the wider sort of business world, so there's very much a lot more emphasis on supply chain risks nowadays. We have been seeing that a lot with commercial organisations, but it's great to see that in the government's security strategy. They do have a lot of third parties that they operate with, the big integrators, that kind of thing. So it's only right that we look quite heavily at the supply chain, especially with the way technology is going. Cyber intelligence is a key focal point. Again, I've done a lot of work with various different institutions over the years where we've talked about cyber intelligence. And some people have said, well, what's the difference between that and risk management? Well, risk management, you're very much looking at the risks to your organization. Cyber intelligence is a really important aspect that you should be doing on a day in, day out basis. Where are the trends going? What is happening? Where do we see shifts in the way that malicious actors are are changing the way they attack or the assets that they're attacking. We've got to stay on top of that, because that kind of thing can change really, really quickly. It's not enough now that you just strap in a bit of AV and, harden up your firewalls. Everything's more distributed, as I just said. We've got massive supply chains. We've got all kinds of technology now that's being consumed in very different ways than it was before. So we need to undertake intelligence. We need to keep hold of that intelligence, and we need to keep going back to it to understand, where things are going, what's the current situation. Cyber assurance was another item. Again, very standard kind of thing. Yes, you can build security in, you can put your defense in depth, you can undertake your policies, procedural, all this stuff, and that's all fantastic, but you need to have assurance that it's working. And the only way really to get good assurance that something is working is by having it checked out by somebody other than the people that put it in. You don't get the people who created the homework to mark their own homework. Why? Because that's just madness. So, I can see there being a lot more emphasis on making sure that security providers in this space are having whatever they're creating checked by industry professionals from sources other than the one that provided that particular system or service or solution or whatever it may well be. Secure by design was another focal point. Secure by design. I don't know about this one. Everybody has the intention, when you go down the route of building some kind of security component in your business, of making it secure by design. And at that point in time, I agree, it will be secure by design. But things change, and things change so quickly and so dramatically, and then big shifts in technology and the way that we consume technology can very quickly make the solution or the product or the organization that you've created the secure by design kind of framework for will change, and it won't be secure by design anymore. So you have to redo the same thing over and over again. It's a good focal point to put in there, but I think in many respects, I don't know. I think that needs fleshing out in that particular document. It's hard to get one singular, yes, we've now got a secure design for the way that we're going forward. Fantastic. So what's going to happen in a year? What's going to happen in 2 years, 3 years? Are you regularly reviewing it? Are you changing it? Security is an ongoing thing. It's not something you just do and then forget. It's something you have to kind of maintain consistently, regularly going forward. So we'll see about that one. Classification of policy for data. Well, that kind of comes into that data-driven security piece as well. I don't know why there's two focal points. Maybe they just want to drive that particular aspect home a little bit more significantly. Yeah, you need to know what data you've got. You need to classify that data. What type of data have we got? Have we got top secret data? We've got public data. We've got confidential data. We've got data that can be released to certain parties with agreements and so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to government institutions, they hold significant amounts of data. And I have been a part of various different projects over the years involving the public sector. And it always scares the willies out of me how much information they do have. I mean, a large chunk of it may just be ancient data that nobody really uses anymore. There's a lot of kind of more current stuff, and you'll be surprised, or maybe not surprised, on how much data the government has on you, on institutions, tax details, criminal records. I mean, the list is endless, and they've got some massive data sets that they need to really seriously look at and figure out some way to provide as much security. Because if they're going for data-driven security, then, that's where a large chunk of your spend is going to be, making sure that you're classifying it properly and that you're taking appropriate measures based on that classification, on the security countermeasures that you put in place to protect that data. He says, taking a big breath after saying that. Again, another focal point that came through, security and data sharing. Again, this kind of comes to the data-driven security and the classification of policy for data and indeed supply chains, as well as, other interested third parties is probably the best way to describe it based on the institutions we're talking about. Secure data sharing is quite a key thing. How are you going to share key data between 2, 3, 4, 5 parties in a way that's not only secure but means it won't get leaked out at the wrong level? It'll be interesting to see what they do on this score. I don't know. I think something I need to think about a little bit more. One of the interesting ones for the focal points was there was a section in there where they say they want to harness emerging technology. And I think that's fantastic. They're looking at AI, they're looking at quantum technology. So one would assume they're looking at some form of machine learning and adaptive security that harnesses some form of artificial intelligence or products that use machine learning to start being able to sift through large amounts of data in order to find trends and alert appropriately. But also quantum, for quantum, I very much guess it's around quantum encryption, that kind of stuff, quantum computing, quantum encryption. I'll be interested to see, a little bit more information on that one. We do have somebody that we're going to hopefully get onto the podcast who is a very highly thought of doctor in that space over in the States, who can probably talk far, far, far better about how that can be harnessed in our particular space. We are going to cover it on podcast, our new podcast that's coming out soon as well. So we'll see if we can get him on board and see if we can get him as part of that. It'll be interesting to see what he says. Host-based capability. So again, I see this as an important aspect of defense in depth going forward, with the deperimeterization of networks and infrastructure at the moment into component pieces, be it third-party driven or be it to be consumed by people who are not necessarily within a particular digital perimeter. You're going to have to start looking at some kind of host-based security and host-based protection. A lot more products, carefully built around particular hosts, be they the endpoint of the civil servant who's working from their kitchen table, because that's the way things have gone at the moment, or be it, a server stuffed full of information sitting somewhere within a cloud, just waiting to be cracked, hacked, and the data to be disseminated to individuals or groups that they shouldn't be sent to. I'm going to be really interested in seeing how that one plays out, and how host-based capabilities and host-based security is going to push going forward. I think there's a lot of good products that are emerging out of that space at the moment because of that need. So let's see how that one goes. Cybersecurity skills as a cyber ecosystem was a specific focal point, and that was alongside another focal point on the cyber workforce. I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges that we currently have. I've mentioned this in other videos. It is again going to be a significant talking point on one of the podcasts that we've got planned. We don't have enough security skills in this business at this moment in time. We've had a large number of the older individuals who were kind of reaching retirement age take the opportunity during the pandemic to retire. Not all of them, but I know quite a few people who were mentors to me, who were, significant people when I was kind of coming up as an information security professional. They've all kind of moved on now. They're either lecturing at university, which is great because they're passing on their skills, or they've just decided that's it. I've done my bit. I'm now going to retire and grow apples or make mead. I do know a few people who are doing that. So there's a big skills gap at the moment. We have a lot of people looking to get into InfoSec at the moment because it's a popular part of the workforce. and things like this cybersecurity strategy will make it more and more popular. But as those newcomers come in, you know, they're going to have to hone their skills over a number of years before, you know, they reach the level of competency that we've seen exiting the market over the last two. I think it's an important part. You know, we've got a lot of people coming in from technology at the moment. You know, the wages at the moment are very, very good in security, so people tend to follow kind of where the wages are increasing, and security is definitely increasing rather quickly. But there's a lag, and there always will be. In the meantime, the rest of us security people who are in that ecosystem with sort of 20 plus years worth of experience, I myself have something in the region of like 25, you know, we are in high demand at the moment. I've got a lot of work on, a hell of a lot of work, and it's not letting up anytime soon. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in this space and the support that the UK government are going to give. I did see some other documentation they brought out recently, and I'm probably going to cover that in a different video, about regulating security people, and I have some very different thoughts on that particular subject matter that I'm probably going to have to cover in another video, and I'm probably going to bring it up in one of the podcasts as well with some of the guests, because I wouldn't mind seeing what other people's view on that is. And then finally, key performance indicators. That was one of the final kind of focal points. There was a few more after that, but I think that was probably another key part of it. This is an area of InfoSec that's always been a little bit on the tough side. How do you create key performance indicators by events that haven't taken place because you've put in the relevant security to be able to protect yourselves against that? There are ways to do that. There's some quite significant ways to do that, but it's always been a bit of a challenge, because if an event hasn't occurred because you've put security in place, quite often you're not going to even know that that event was even going to potentially happen because it hasn't happened. How do you predict something that hasn't happened? I don't know. You know, it's an interesting one. So I'm going to be interested to see what the UK government do around their key performance indicators to be able to assess how well their strategy is working going forward. And how they're going to communicate that to us as well, you know, the general populace, and whether or not it's going to be efficient, and whether they're going to be sort of open and honest about it as well. You know, at the moment we're still waiting for this report about the fun and games and parties that Number 10 were allegedly having during the lockdowns, and if they're talking about what they can and can't, you know, produce and show now about that, then what are they going to do when it comes to their cybersecurity strategy? I understand totally that in many cases, you know, you've got to be a little bit careful on the information that you're sending out to the big wide world, especially around this kind of thing. But I don't know, you know, we need to establish as the, you know, members of the UK population, are we secure? It's not enough for a government to turn around and say, we are secure. Well, what does that mean? I mean, that can mean any number of things, you know. And quite honestly, I'm dubious about believing somebody who just makes a statement like that, even if they are, you know, a highly placed institution or a highly placed individual, especially in politics. Yeah, politics. They never lie in politics, do they? You know. So let's see how this one plays out. And if you guys have got any comments, or you guys have got anything that you feel is an interesting aspect of this, then I will take that on board and take that over to those podcasts, or maybe produce additional content to kind of cover my thoughts on that particular subject. I do urge you to go to the government website and have a read through it yourself, see what you think. It'll be great to get some additional views. So thank you ever so much for sitting down and watching this video. Please press the like and the subscribe button, the little bell notification for when we release new videos. I know we've been a bit slow recently. We are going to start ramping those back up. Please look after yourselves. Have a fantastic time, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.